The end had not been violent, nor had it been bathed in the blood of battle. It had been quiet. Uzumaki Naruto, the seventh Hokage of Konohagakure, the hero of the fourth great shinobi war, and the man who had united the 5 great nations, had simply grown old. He had lived a full, vibrant life. He had seen his children grow, watched his grandchildren take their first wobbly steps, and felt the warm, comforting hand of his wife, Hinata, resting in his own as his heartbeat finally slowed to a halt. He had died in a warm bed, surrounded by the village he loved, leaving behind a legacy of peace. It was supposed to be the end. A well-earned rest in the Pure Lands. But the universe, it seemed, had a strange sense of humor. Or perhaps, the Sage of Six Paths was simply not finished with him yet. Naruto's consciousness drifted through a sea of formless white, untethered from time and space. There was no pain here, only a profound, echoing silence. Then, a voice broke through the void, ancient, resonant, and deeply familiar. "You have done well, child of prophecy," the voice of Hagoromo Akatsuki echoed. "You broke the cycle of hatred in your time. But the roots of that hatred run deeper than one lifetime can prune. The timelines are fracturing, bleeding into one another. A shadow remains, one that threatens to unspool the tapestry of the world." Naruto tried to speak, but he had no mouth. He tried to reach out, but he had no hands. "I cannot send you back to the life you knew," the sage continued, his tone carrying a weight of solemn apology. "But I can offer you a second chance. A chance to heal the wounds before they fester, to save those who were lost to the darkness. The path will not be the one you walked before. It will be forged in the very heart of the storm." "Wait, old man." Naruto's spirit flared. "What are you talking about? My time is over. Let the next generation handle it. The convergence requires a vessel." Hagoromo's voice began to fade, drowned out by a sudden, rushing sound, like a waterfall crashing into his ears. "Save them, Naruto. Save the ones who fell into the abyss. Find the true dawn." The white void shattered like glass. Suddenly, there was no warmth. There was only an agonizing, bone-deep cold. Naruto gasped, his lungs burning as they expanded, drawing in air that tasted of smog, rust, and petrichor. He choked, violently coughing up a mouthful of stagnant, metallic-tasting water. His eyes snapped open, but the world was a blurry smear of grays and sickly neon blues. Rain. It was pouring in sheets, hammering against his back with the unforgiving weight of 1,000 tiny stones. He pushed himself up, his hands pressing into cold, slick cobblestone. A sharp spike of pain shot up his arms. He blinked rapidly, clearing the water from his eyelashes, and stared at his hands. They were small. Too small. The skin was pale, devoid of the wrinkles and calluses of a 70-year-old man, but scraped and bloodied at the knuckles. He was wearing rags, a tattered gray tunic soaked through to the bone, and loose pants that clung uncomfortably to his shivering legs. What the hell?" Naruto rasped. His voice was high, lacking the deep, gravelly timbre he had possessed for decades. It was the voice of a child. He dragged himself into a sitting position, leaning his back against a cold metal pipe that ran along a towering, rusted brick wall. He looked up. Above him stretched a labyrinth of towering skyscrapers, a chaotic mess of industrial architecture, exposed pipes, and thick, smog-choked skies. Neon kanji signs flickered in the gloom, casting eerie reflections in the puddles on the street. It wasn't Konoha. Not even close. Amigakure. The hidden rain village. Panic, icy and sharp, began to claw at his chest. Had the sage sent him back? If so, why was he here, in the heart of the rain village, wearing the clothes of a street urchin? What year was it? Before the panic could fully take hold, a deep, rumbling chuckle echoed in the very center of his mind. "Calm down, brat. Your hyperventilating is giving me a headache." Naruto's breath hitched. He closed his eyes and shoved his consciousness inward, diving deep into his own mindscape. The familiar sewer-like corridors of his youth were gone, replaced by the expansive, sunlit cavern they had built together in his later years. And there, resting with his massive head on his paws, was the nine-tailed fox. "Kurama! Kurama!" Naruto shouted, rushing forward, though his mental projection was just as small and young as his physical body. You're here! You crossed over too? Did you really think the old man would separate us? Kurama opened one massive crimson eye, his slit pupil narrowing as he looked down at his tiny Jinchuriki. Though, I must admit, I wasn't expecting us to end up looking like a drowned rat in the gutters of Amigakure. The sage's aim was slightly off. Off? Kurama, I'm a kid again. Naruto gestured wildly to his 12-year-old body. And we're in the Rain Village. What happened to Konoha? What happened to me being there? Kurama shifted, his massive tail swishing behind him, stirring the phantom water of the mindscape. The continuum is self-correcting, Naruto. Hagoromo warned you of a glitch. By sending our souls back, the universe had to accommodate the anomaly. From what I can sense, we are about 3 or 4 years before the Fourth Shinobi War. But you, the Uzumaki Naruto of this timeline, do not exist in Konoha. Naruto froze. What do you mean I don't exist? I mean exactly that. The timeline shifted to accommodate your arrival here. As far as the world knows, the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki either vanished, died at birth, or is completely undocumented. We are ghosts, Naruto. Blank slates. Naruto absorbed this, his mind racing with the implications. No Irika. No Team 7. No Kakashi, Sakura, or Sasuke to rely on. He was entirely alone in enemy territory, stripped of his history, his titles, and his allies. But he retained something far more valuable, a lifetime of combat experience, the chakra of the Nine Tails, and the knowledge of everything that was to come. The sage said to save the ones who fell into the abyss, Naruto muttered, looking down at his small hands. He meant the Akatsuki. He meant Nagato. Itachi. Obito. A tall order for a brat shivering in an alleyway, Kurama noted dryly. Speaking of which, you might want to wake up. We have company. Naruto's eyes snapped open in the physical world. The rain was still hammering down, but he could hear the distinct sound of footsteps splashing in the puddles, approaching fast. He didn't move his head, relying on the sensory capabilities of a seasoned Hokage, even if his current body hadn't physically unlocked Sage mode yet. 3 distinct chakra signatures. Rough, unrefined, but malicious. 3 figures emerged from the gloom of the alleyway. They wore mismatched, rusted armor and carried rusted blades. Missing Nin? Thugs who preyed on the weak in a village torn apart by civil war and poverty. Well, the leader, a large man with a scar running across a milky white eye, sneered. Looks like a little rat washed up in our territory. Check his pockets. If he doesn't have food, the clothes will fetch a few ryo. He looks half dead already, boss. The second man, thinner and twitchy, chuckled, drawing a jagged kunai. I'll make it quick. Naruto didn't rise immediately. He stayed slumped against the wall, head bowed, rain matting his golden hair to his forehead. He took a slow, deep breath, assessing his body. His chakra coils were tight, underdeveloped, lacking the massive reserves he was used to in his prime, though Kurama's presence acted like an ocean pressing against a dam just beneath the surface. His muscles were weak. If he tried to use a Rasengan right now, it would likely fizzle out or tear his undeveloped tenketsu to shreds. He would have to do this the old-fashioned way. Hey, kid, the twitchy thug barked, stepping within striking distance. Don't make this harder than it has to be. As the man reached down to grab Naruto's collar, the boy moved. It wasn't the explosive, blinding speed of the yellow flash's sun. It was the terrifying, hyper-efficient movement of a veteran who had fought gods and monsters. Naruto's small hand shot up, his fingers clamping around the thug's wrist with a grip like a steel vice. The man gasped in surprise. Before he could react, Naruto pivoted on his heel, using the man's downward momentum against him. With a sharp twist of his hips, Naruto snapped the man's wrist. The sickening crack echoed over the sound of the rain. The thug screamed, dropping the kunai, but Naruto was already moving. He snatched the falling weapon from the air, dropped to a crouch, and drove the hilt of the kunai brutally into the man's kneecap, shattering it. As the man collapsed, Naruto grabbed him by the throat and hurled his body into the second thug, sending them both crashing into a stack of metal crates. The leader stared in stunned silence. This wasn't a starving orphan. This was a monster wearing a child's skin. Kill him! The leader roared, drawing a long, rusted katana and charging forward. Naruto exhaled slowly. The rain seemed to slow down around him. He didn't want to kill. As Hokage, he had always sought the peaceful resolution. But this wasn't Konoha. This was Amigakure. The rules of survival here were written in blood, and if he held back, he would draw unwanted attention to his true capabilities, or worse, end up dead before his mission even began. The leader swung the katana in a wide, vicious arc aimed at Naruto's neck. Naruto didn't block. His tiny arms would have snapped. Instead, he slipped perfectly inside the man's guard, the blade whistling mere millimeters over his head, cutting a few strands of wet blonde hair. In the fraction of a second that the man's chest was exposed, Naruto struck. He channeled a tiny, concentrated burst of wind-natured chakra to his fingertips, a rudimentary technique he hadn't used in decades. He drove his palm directly upward into the man's solar plexus. Wind release, gale palm. It wasn't a massive blast, but at point-blank range, it was devastating. The compressed air ruptured the man's diaphragm and launched him backward. He flew 10 feet, crashing heavily into the brick wall with a wet thud. He slid to the ground, unconscious, gasping desperately for air that wouldn't come. The remaining thug, the one who had been knocked over, scrambled to his feet. He looked at his broken companions, then at the 12-year-old boy standing amidst the puddles, holding a kunai loosely by his side. Naruto's blue eyes were cold, calculating, devoid of a child's innocence. The man dropped his weapon and ran, his terrified footsteps echoing away into the rain-slicked labyrinth of the city. Naruto stood in the empty alleyway, his breathing even. He tossed the kunai aside. The adrenaline faded, leaving behind the aching reality of his new existence. He was freezing, exhausted, and hungry. Well, Naruto muttered to himself, rubbing his temples. That could have gone smoother. Your taijutsu is sloppy in that body, Kurama critiqued, though there was a hint of amusement in his booming voice. You overcompensated for your lack of reach. But not bad for a dead man. Give me a break, Kurama, Naruto thought back, wincing as a cramp seized his calf. I haven't been this short since I painted the Hokage monument. Naruto turned to leave the alley, intending to find a dry place to sort out his thoughts and formulate a plan. But as he took his first step, the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. The air pressure in the alley plummeted. The rain, which had been falling in a relentless torrent, suddenly stopped. No, Naruto realized, looking up. The rain hadn't stopped. It was being deflected. Above him, descending slowly from the smog-choked sky, was a swarm of white paper. The origami sheets fluttered gracefully, coalescing and folding together in the air until they formed the shape of a woman. She had pale skin, striking amber eyes, and a light blue paper flower resting in her blue hair. She wore a long, black cloak emblazoned with blood-red clouds. Conan. Naruto's breath caught in his throat. Seeing her alive, looking down at him with an expression of cold indifference, felt like a physical blow to his chest. He remembered her death. He remembered the tragic end to her unwavering loyalty to Yahiko's dream. Before he could process her arrival, a heavy footstep sounded at the end of the alleyway, blocking his only exit. Naruto slowly turned his head. Stepping out of the shadows, untouched by the rain that seemed to part around him, was a man. He had spiky orange hair, dozens of black metal piercings marring his pale face, and wore the same black and red cloak. But it was his eyes that commanded the world around him, concentric circles of purple. The eyes of a god. The Rinnegan. Pain. Nagato, Naruto thought, a wave of profound sorrow washing over him. The face of Yahiko, animated by the grief-stricken will of Nagato. The last time Naruto had seen this face, they had been fighting to the death in the ruins of Konoha. He remembered the pain, the rage over Jiraiya's death, the sheer devastation. For a terrifying second, Naruto's emotional control slipped. A phantom tear threatened to prick the corner of his eye. His jaw tightened, his bottom lip trembling just a fraction. He wanted to scream at them, to tell them they were being manipulated, to wrap them in a hug and tell them their master, Jiraiya, loved them until his dying breath. Hold it together, Naruto! Kurama roared in his mind, snapping him out of his reverie. If you blow your cover now, they will dissect you. You are a stray dog right now. Act like it, Kurama was right. Naruto swallowed the lump in his throat and forced his features into a mask of defiant, feral wariness. He slouched his shoulders, raising his fists in a sloppy, defensive posture, playing the part of a cornered street kid. Pain stopped a few paces away. His Rinnegan stared through Naruto, analyzing, weighing his soul. I felt a disturbance in the rain. Pain spoke. His voice was layered, echoing with an unnatural, godlike resonance that sent shivers down Naruto's spine. A sudden, sharp spike of chakra. Yet I arrived to find only a child. Pain's gaze shifted to the two unconscious thugs on the ground, then back to Naruto. You did this, Pain stated. It wasn't a question. They wanted my clothes, Naruto said, forcing his voice to sound rough, defensive. They didn't need them anymore. Konan drifted down, her paper wings dissolving into a flurry of sheets that settled back into her cloak. She stood beside Pain, observing the boy. He uses wind nature chakra without hand seals, she noted softly, her amber eyes narrowing. His movements were efficient. Lethal. He is no ordinary orphan, Pain. Indeed, Pain murmured. What is your name, boy? Naruto hesitated. He couldn't use his real name. Uzumaki Naruto was a name that might trigger Zetsu's vast intelligence network, or draw the attention of Obito, who knew of Kushina's child. He needed an alias, something unassuming, yet familiar enough to respond to naturally. Menma, Naruto lied smoothly, borrowing the name from a dream he had long ago. Just Menma. I don't have a clan. Menma, Pain repeated, tasting the word. You have nowhere to go. No family to return to. The hidden rain is a crucible that burns away the weak. Yet you survive? Why? Because I refuse to die in the mud, Naruto answered, injecting a hint of genuine conviction into his voice. Because this world is rotten, and the only way to survive is to be stronger than the ones trying to step on you. Pain's eyes widened a fraction of an inch. The answer resonated deeply with the core of his twisted philosophy. He took a step closer, towering over the small blonde boy. You see the truth of this world, Menma. You have tasted its cruelty. You understand pain, Pain said, raising a hand. The cycle of hatred, of war and death, it infects everything. The great nations use this land as their battlefield, leaving only orphans and corpses in their wake. Naruto listened, playing his part, though every word felt like a dagger. He knew this speech. He knew the agony behind it. I am a god who will break this cycle, Pain continued, looking down at Naruto with a terrifying, absolute certainty. I am building a force that will force the world to know true peace through true pain. We are the dawn. The Akatsuki? Pain extended his hand toward Naruto. You possess strength, Menma. Raw, unguided power. If you stay here, you will eventually be killed, or you will become just another predator in the gutters. I offer you a third choice. Naruto looked at the pale, pierced hand extended toward him. This was the moment. The divergence of destiny. If he took this hand, he was no longer the hero of the Leaf. He would become an S-rank criminal, a member of the most dangerous terrorist organization in shinobi history. He would have to lie, deceive, and walk in the darkest shadows of the world. But it was the only way. To save them, he had to join them. He had to dismantle Obito's Eye of the Moon plan from the inside out, before the war could ever begin. I'm doing this for you, pervy sage, Naruto thought. I'm going to save your precious students. Naruto slowly reached up. He didn't take Pain's hand with the hesitance of a frightened child, but with a firm, decisive grip. I don't care about your godhood, Naruto said, looking directly into the Rinnegan. But if you're going to change this rotten world, I want in. A ghost of a smile, so faint it was barely there, brushed across Pain's face. Brave words. We shall see if you have the strength to back them up. Pain lowered his hand and glanced at Konan. She nodded gracefully. Reaching into the folds of her robes, she withdrew a heavy, black fabric. She stepped forward and draped it over Naruto's small shoulders. The Akatsuki cloak was far too large for his 12-year-old frame, pooling around his ankles, the high collar swallowing his neck. But the weight of it felt monumental. The blood-red clouds, symbolizing the bloodshed of the Rain Village, stood out starkly against the black. From this day forward, you have no past, Pain declared, his voice echoing over the rhythmic drumming of the rain. You are no longer an orphan of the rain. You are a shadow of the dawn. Conan reached out and took Naruto's right hand. From her palm, a small, cold metal object slipped onto his little finger. Naruto looked down. It was a silver ring, bearing a dark teal stone. Carved into the face of the stone was the kanji for ku, void. It was the ring formerly worn by Orochimaru. Come, Menma, Pain commanded, turning his back and walking out of the alleyway, the rain continuing to part for him. Your training begins today. Naruto stood in the rain, the heavy cloak clinging to him, the ring cold against his skin. He took one last look at the rusted, blood-stained alleyway. The seventh Hokage was dead. Uzumaki Naruto was gone. Menma of the Akatsuki pulled the high collar of his cloak up over his mouth, hiding his determined grin, and followed the god of the rain into the darkness. The labyrinthine belly of Amigekyo was a damp, rusted tomb. As Naruto followed Pain and Conan deeper into the central tower, the incessant drumming of the rain faded into a muffled, rhythmic thud, replaced by the echoing drip of condensation from the steel pipes above. The oversized Akatsuki cloak dragged across the grated floorboards behind him, heavy and soaking wet. He felt ridiculous, like a child wearing his father's coat, but he carried himself with a stiff, guarded posture. Don't show weakness, he reminded himself, channeling the hardened demeanor of an ANBU commander rather than the boisterous energy of his youth. You're walking too rigidly, brat, Kurama's voice echoed in the vast cavern of his mind. A street rat who just fought for his life wouldn't march like a seasoned shinobi on parade. Loosen your shoulders. Limp a little. The thugs in the alley bruised your ribs, remember? Naruto mentally cursed. The fox was right. In his old life, as the seventh Hokage, he was accustomed to projecting absolute authority. Here, he had to be Menma, a feral, traumatized orphan who had merely gotten lucky. He forced his shoulders to slump, allowing a slight drag in his left step, and let out a small, convincing shiver. Up ahead, Pain moved like a phantom, his feet making absolutely no sound on the metal walkways. Conan walked beside him, her amber eyes occasionally darting back to observe the blond boy trailing them. We are descending to the lower sanctum. Pain's hollow, godlike voice finally broke the silence. The other members of the Dawn are currently scattered across the elemental nations, pursuing our goals. They will meet you via astral projection. Do not speak unless spoken to, Menma. They are not as forgiving as I am. Naruto scoffed inwardly. Forgiving? You wiped out my entire village, Nagato. But outwardly, he merely offered a curt nod, pulling the high collar of the cloak up further to obscure the lower half of his face. They reached a massive set of iron doors, sealed with complex Fuinjutsu tags. Pain didn't even weave a hand sign. He simply pushed his chakra into the metal. The tags glowed a sickly purple, and the doors groaned open, revealing a cavernous, pitch-black chamber. As they stepped inside, torches erupted into blue, ghostly flames along the walls. The sheer scale of the room was breathtaking, but it was what dominated the center of the cavern that made Naruto's blood run cold. The ghetto statue. The demonic statue of the outer path. Even dormant, chained to the rock, the hulking, monstrous husk radiated an aura of pure, suffocating despair. Its 9 eyes were tightly shut, a wooden blindfold lashed across its face. Its jagged, humanoid jaw rested on chained hands. The sheer malevolence of the chakra it leaked made Naruto's newly regressed, 12-year-old body tremble involuntarily. Disgusting piece of kindling, Kurama snarled in Naruto's mind, the fox's hackles raising at the sight of the Ten-Tails husk. To think they intend to lock me back inside that abominable thing. Keep your chakra tightly coiled, Naruto. If that statue senses even a wisp of my presence, Pain will know exactly what you are. I know, Naruto thought back, clamping down on his spiritual energy until he felt completely mundane. Take your place on the finger of the void, Pain commanded, gesturing toward the massive, outstretched hands of the statue. Naruto swallowed hard, leaped up the stone tiers with practiced ease, earning another analytical glance from Conan, and took his spot on the designated finger. Pain and Conan took their respective places. Pain clasped his hands together, his Rinnegan flaring in the gloom. Summoning. Ghetto art of Rinne rebirth. A pulse of chakra rippled through the cavern. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a flickering, kaleidoscopic light began to manifest on the other fingers of the statue. One by one, holographic projections of the deadliest missing nin in the world snapped into existence. They were spectral, glowing with shifting hues of blue and purple, yet their presences were overwhelmingly oppressive. Naruto kept his head bowed, his eyes darting beneath his wet bangs to catalogue the ghosts of his past. On the right thumb, the hulking, shark-like form of Kisame Hashigaki appeared, resting his massive, bandage-wrapped sword, Samahata, on his shoulder. Next to him, the hunched, grotesque puppet armor of Sasori of the Red Sand. Then came Deidara, leaning casually with his arms crossed, and Kakuzu, whose green eyes glared menacingly from beneath his hood. On the far left, Haiden stretched his neck, his scythe gleaming even in holographic form. And finally, taking his place on the right ring finger, was a man whose mere silhouette seemed to swallow the light around him. The Crow. Itachi Uchiha, Leader-sama, Kisame's raspy, amused voice echoed through the chamber. You call the gathering, but I don't see any Jinchuriki ready for extraction. What's the occasion? Yeah, Haiden chimed in, his voice grating and loud. I was in the middle of a very important sacrifice to Lord Jashin. This better be good, or I'm cursing your pierced ass. Kakuzu shot Haiden a withering glare. Shut up, idiot. Time is money, and you're wasting both. We have a new addition. Pain's voice cut through the bickering, cold, and absolute. It instantly silenced the room. The ring of the void has found a new bearer. Every spectral head turned. 10 pairs of eyes locked onto the small, cloaked figure standing on the statue's finger. The oppressive weight of their combined killing intent slammed into Naruto. A normal 12-year-old would have passed out, or at least fallen to his knees weeping. Naruto merely tightened his grip on his cloak and stared back. You've got to be kidding me, Deidara scoffed, leaning forward to get a better look. He's just a kid. He looks like a stiff breeze would snap him in half. Is this a joke, leader? He's tiny, Haiden laughed mercilessly. What's he gonna do, bite our enemy's ankles? Jashin wouldn't even want his blood, there's not enough of it. He possesses potential, Konan defended softly. He survives in the rain without aid. His affinity for wind chakra is entirely instinctual. Survival is not a qualification, Sasori's deep, impatient voice rumbled from inside his Hiriko puppet. Orochimaru wore that ring. This boy is an insult to the Akatsuki standard. Don't be so hasty, Kakuzu muttered, calculating. If he dies quickly, I can sell his organs. Young, healthy organs fetch a decent price on the black market. Through the barrage of insults, Naruto remained completely still, his eyes fixed on only 2 figures. The first was a figure that wasn't officially standing on a finger. Emerging from the literal shadows of the cavern floor, a bizarre, dual-toned creature rose from the stone. Zetsu. Well, 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 the light side of Zetsu chimed, his voice sing-song and curious. A new friend? He smells like wet dog and ozone. He is an unknown variable, the dark side of Zetsu hissed, his voice like gravel grinding together. A stray. Where did you find him, Pain? He is Menma. A child of Amigakure, Pain replied. There are no records of a Menma with high-level chakra potential in the Rain's databases, Black Zetsu countered, his yellow eyes narrowing suspiciously. He is a blank spot. I do not like blank spots. Naruto felt his heart rate spike. Zetsu was the real danger here. Pain and the others were powerful, but Zetsu was Kagaya's will, ancient, omniscient, and paranoid. And beyond Zetsu, hidden so perfectly in the darkness of the cavern that not even the Akatsuki members noticed him, Naruto's sage-honed senses picked up a faint, twisted spatial distortion. Obito. He was watching. Evaluating the new piece on the chessboard. His origins do not matter, Pain declared, slamming his foot down. The sound echoed like a gunshot, demanding obedience. What matters is whether he can be forged into a weapon for the dawn. Words will not prove his worth. Only blood. Pain turned his Rinnegan toward the silent figure standing perfectly still on the ring finger. Itachi. The Uchiha's red eyes shifted slightly, locking onto Naruto. The Sharingan spun lazily, cold, analytical, and utterly devoid of emotion. Yes, leader. You are currently without a partner, Pain stated. Kisame will handle the assassination of the hidden Miss Daimyo's brother alone. You will take the boy, Menma. You have a subjugation mission in the land of rivers. Take him with you. Test him. If he proves useful, train him. If he proves to be a liability, dispose of him. Naruto's breath caught. Partnered with Itachi. It was exactly what he needed, exactly what he had hoped for, yet the reality of it was terrifying. Itachi in this era was ruthless, deeply entrenched in his double-agent persona, and dying of a mysterious illness. Understood, Itachi replied, his voice smooth as silk. He didn't offer a single protest. He just stared at Naruto, peeling away the boy's layers with his gaze. Where shall we rendezvous? He will leave Amigakure immediately and head southeast, Konan said. Meet him at the border of the Land of Fire. The holograms flickered. Try not to die too fast, kid. Haiden cackled. Or do. I'd love to sacrifice your corpse. I give him 3 days, Kakuzu grumbled. One by one, the astral projections vanished. The cavern fell silent once more, leaving only Pain, Konan, and Naruto standing in the gloom. Pain looked down at him. Do not fail, Menma. The crow does not suffer weakness. I won't, Naruto said, his voice hard. 2 days later, the eternal rain of Amigakure gave way to the dense, humid forests of the Land of Rivers. Naruto leaped through the canopy, his small legs burning with exertion. Traveling at Akatsuki speed was brutal on his underdeveloped body. He was pushing his chakra coils to their absolute limit just to maintain the pace, utilizing precise chakra control to reinforce his muscles so he wouldn't fall behind. Up ahead, moving with the silent, effortless grace of a ghost, was Itachi Uchiha. They had met at the border exactly at dawn. Itachi had not offered a greeting, a handshake, or an introduction. He had simply looked at Naruto, nodded once, and leapt into the trees. They had been running in absolute silence for 6 hours. Naruto watched the back of Itachi's cloak flutter in the wind. The nostalgia and grief were a heavy lump in his throat. He remembered the Edo Tensei Itachi, the man who had smiled at him, entrusted him with Sasuke's future, and called him a true brother. He remembered the gentle poke on the forehead, but the man running ahead of him was not that Itachi. This was the Itachi who had slaughtered his clan only a few years prior. This was the hardened criminal whose mind was a steel trap of secrets and lies, carrying the burden of Konoha's darkness entirely alone. I have to get through to him, Naruto thought, jumping to a higher branch. But I can't just tell him who I am. He'd never believe me. He'd think it was an enemy genjutsu or a trap by Danzo. I have to make him question my identity naturally. Suddenly Itachi stopped. He didn't slow down. He simply dropped out of the air and landed perfectly on a wide oak branch, crouching in silence. Naruto landed a second later, a few feet away, panting softly. We make camp here, Itachi said, his voice quiet, blending seamlessly with the rustling leaves. Without waiting for a response, Itachi dropped to the forest floor. Naruto followed. Within minutes they had a small, smokeless fire crackling in a clearing surrounded by dense brush. The sun began to set, casting long, menacing shadows through the trees. Itachi sat on a mossy log, staring into the flames. The orange light danced across his pale skin and the deep stress lines beneath his eyes. Naruto sat across from him, pulling his knees to his chest to ward off the evening chill. His stomach gave a loud, treacherous rumble. Itachi didn't look up, but his hand moved to a pouch on his belt. He tossed the small, wrapped package across the fire. Naruto caught it. It was a military ration bar. Dry, tasteless, but packed with calories. Eat, Itachi commanded softly. You expend too much chakra masking your footsteps. You are inefficient. Tomorrow, we cross into hostile territory. If you are fatigued, you will die. Naruto unwrapped the ration bar and took a bite, forcing himself not to grimace at the chalky taste. I'm fine. Just not used to this body yet. It was a slip of the tongue, a subtle one, but in front of Itachi Uchiha, it was glaring. Itachi's dark eyes shifted from the fire to Naruto. Not used to this body? An unusual phrase for a child. Are you suffering from a physical ailment, Menma? Naruto froze mid-chew. Damn it. He misses nothing. I meant, a growth spurt, Naruto lied, recovering quickly. He swallowed the dry ration. Bones ache. Muscles feel tight. When you live on the streets, you don't get much food. Suddenly eating and running, it throws you off. Itachi stared at him for a long, unbearable moment. Then, he looked back at the fire. Your breathing is too measured for a street orphan. Your stance, when you landed on the branch, was perfectly balanced to counter a strike from above. You hold your kunai in your left pouch, but your dominant foot is your right, suggesting ambidexterity trained for combat, not survival. Naruto's heart pounded against his ribs. He had tried to be sloppy, but his muscle memory, ingrained from decades of warfare, was betraying him. Pain-sama believes you are a diamond in the rough, Itachi continued, his tone conversational, yet carrying an underlying threat. But I do not believe you are a feral child of the rain. Who trained you? Nobody, Naruto said defensively, glaring across the fire. You watch a few mercenaries kill each other in the alleys, you learn a thing or two. Learning is one thing. Application is another, Itachi countered quietly. You do not fear me. Naruto blinked. Should I? Most children would, Itachi stated simply. He didn't say it with arrogance, he said it as a cold, undeniable fact. You are sitting across from a man who has slaughtered hundreds. My name is spoken with terror in the 5 great nations. Yet your heart rate is steady. Your chakra is calm. When you look at me, you do not see a monster. You see. Itachi paused, his Sharingan activating for a brief second in the firelight. An equal. Why? Naruto tightened his grip on his knees. Itachi was dissecting him with words. He had to pivot, to play into the persona while setting a trap. Because monsters don't scare me, Naruto muttered, looking down at the dirt. Monsters are just people who got pushed too far. Or people who push themselves too far to protect something. Itachi's hands resting on his lap twitched. It was a microscopic movement, but Naruto caught it. A philosophical view for a 12-year-old, Itachi noted, his voice dropping a fraction of an octave. What do you know of protecting things? I know it usually gets you killed, Naruto said bitterly, leaning into the act. Or it leaves you alone. I had a friend once. He lost his whole family. Someone took them all away in one night. The silence that fell over the campsite was deafening. The crackle of the fire seemed to amplify tenfold. Itachi did not move a single muscle. Even his breathing seemed to stop. Is that so? Itachi said softly. It wasn't a question. Yeah, Naruto continued, poking the fire with a stick, intentionally keeping his eyes averted to avoid genjutsu. He made his whole life about revenge. Getting stronger, just to kill the guy who did it. He was obsessed. A real avenger. And did he succeed? Itachi asked. The air around him was growing colder. The temperature in the clearing seemed to drop. Naruto sighed, tossing the stick into the flames. I don't know. Last I saw him, he was leaving our home to find a snake who promised him power. I tried to stop him. Told him revenge was stupid. Told him that the guy who killed his family, maybe he had a reason. Maybe he loved him more than the village. But Sasuke never listened to me. The name dropped like a live grenade. Sasuke. The reaction was instantaneous and terrifying. Before Naruto could even blink, before the sound of the word had fully dissipated into the night air, the campfire was extinguished by a violent burst of wind. Naruto was suddenly slammed backward against the trunk of a massive tree, the breath driven from his lungs. A hand, strong as iron, wrapped around his throat, pinning him to the bark. The forest was gone. The starry night sky was gone. Naruto found himself in a world of inverted colors. The sky was a bleeding, bruised crimson red. The ground was an ocean of black water. And he wasn't pinned against a tree anymore. He was strapped to a massive, stone cross, heavy iron bands digging into his wrists and ankles. Tsukuyomi. Standing before him was Itachi. But he was no longer the calm, collected Akatsuki member. He was a nightmare. Dozens of Itachi clones surrounded the cross, holding long, gleaming katanas. The real Itachi stood directly in front of Naruto, his Manjikyu Sharingan spinning furiously, a mixture of sheer terror and unbridled killing intent radiating from him. Who are you? Itachi's voice echoed from everywhere at once, distorted and demonic. Naruto struggled against the bindings, panting. I told you. I'm Menma. Shing! One of the clones drove a katana straight through Naruto's left shoulder. Naruto screamed, the phantom pain searing through his nervous system with agonizing realism. Do not lie to me! Itachi roared, his usual composure entirely shattered. He stepped closer, grabbing Naruto's chin, forcing him to look into the Manjikyu. The Leaf Village? Sasuke? Who told you that name? Are you one of Danzo's root operatives? A spy sent by the Hokage. Speak! Danzo is a rat who deserves to rot. Naruto spat, coughing up phantom blood. And the Hokage is an old man smoking a pipe. Shing! Another sword pierced his right thigh. Naruto bit his lip hard enough to draw blood, refusing to scream again. How do you know my brother? Itachi demanded, his voice trembling slightly, a crack in the armor, revealing the desperate, fiercely protective older brother beneath. If you are a threat to him, I will unspool your mind until there is nothing left but ash. I will torture you for 72 hours in this realm before I let you die in the real one. Naruto looked up at Itachi, panting through the pain. This was it. The moment of truth. If he couldn't convince Itachi, he would die here, his mind shattered by the Tsukuyomi. I know him, Naruto whispered, his blue eyes locking onto the bleeding red of the Sharingan, because I broke his arms at the Valley of the End trying to stop him from going to Orochimaru. I know him because I promised Sakura I'd bring him back. Itachi recoiled as if physically struck. The clones wielding the swords wavered. Valley of the End? Orochimaru? Sakura? Impossible. You are 12 years old. Sasuke is currently in the academy. He is barely 8 years old. Not where I come from, Naruto said, his voice steadying. In my time, Sasuke is a father. He wanders the world protecting the leaf from the shadows. Just like you did, Itachi. Itachi stared at him, the Manjikyu spinning erratically. Time travel? A genjutsu within a genjutsu? No. This is a trick. A pathetic deception by an enemy who has peered into my mind. Itachi raised his own katana, aiming it directly at Naruto's chest. I do not know what twisted jutsu you are using to glean this information, but it ends now. I will tear the truth from your corpse. As Itachi thrust the blade forward, Naruto closed his eyes. Now, Kurama! Deep within Naruto's mindscape, the nine-tailed fox rose to his full, mountainous height. He threw his massive head back and unleashed a roar that shook the very foundations of the spiritual plane. Get out of my Jinchuriki's head, Uchiha! An eruption of pure, boiling red chakra exploded from Naruto's core. It didn't just flow through his chakra network. It violently surged outward, a tidal wave of demonic, corrosive energy that crashed against the fragile, constructed reality of the Tsukuyomi. The crimson sky shattered like stained glass. The black water boiled and evaporated. The stone cross cracked and crumbled to dust. Itachi was thrown backward by the sheer force of the mental shockwave. In the real world, less than a second had passed. Naruto slumped against the tree in the dark, gasping for breath, clutching his chest where the phantom swords had pierced him. Sweat poured down his face. A few feet away, Itachi was on one knee, clutching his left eye. A single trail of dark blood leaked from his eyelid, running down his pale cheek. He was breathing heavily, his Manjikyu fading back to coal-black eyes. He stared at Naruto, genuine, undisguised shock written across his features. That chakra, Itachi whispered, his voice hoarse. That was not an illusion. That was the Nine Tails. But the Nine Tails is sealed within. Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto finished for him, pushing himself off the tree trunk. He wiped the sweat from his brow and stood tall, dropping the Menma posture entirely. The hunched, feral street rat was gone. In his place stood a 12-year-old boy who exuded the calm, immovable presence of a Kage. Naruto took a step toward the kneeling prodigy. The moonlight broke through the canopy, illuminating the red clouds on his oversized cloak. The timeline is broken, Itachi, Naruto said, his voice dropping the youthful pitch, carrying the weight of an old soul. The Fourth Shinobi World War is coming. Madara Uchiha is coming, and the Akatsuki is the match that will light the fire. Itachi did not move. He was a genius, a master tactician, but the sheer impossibility of the situation had paralyzed his legendary intellect. The boy possessed the nine tails. The boy knew his deepest, darkest secret, that he loved Sasuke. The boy had effortlessly shattered the Tsukuyomi, not with a Sharingan, but with sheer, overwhelming Biju power. What are you? Itachi asked, his guard completely up, a kunai slipping silently into his hand. Naruto stopped a few feet away. He didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't take a combat stance. Instead, he reached up and pulled the high collar of his Akatsuki cloak down, revealing his face fully in the moonlight. He offered Itachi a small, sad, knowing smile. A smile that Itachi had seen on the face of his best friend, Shisui, right before he died. I'm the guy who's going to save you from yourself, Naruto said softly. We need to talk, Itachi. About Danzo. About the massacre. And about how we're going to dismantle the Akatsuki from the inside. The silence that followed Naruto's declaration hung in the humid air of the land of rivers, thick and suffocating. The only sound was the hiss of the rain beginning to fall again, pattering softly against the broad leaves of the forest canopy. Itachi Uchiha remained on one knee, his hand still covering his bleeding left eye. His chest heaved with slow, measured breaths, a desperate attempt to regain the ironclad control he had maintained over his emotions for years. His mind, hailed as the greatest of his generation, was a whirlwind of conflicting data. A 12-year-old boy. The Nine Tails Chakra. A casual dismissal of the Tsukuyomi. And knowledge of secrets, so deeply buried they were soaked in the blood of his kin. Time travel, Itachi finally whispered, the words tasting like ash on his tongue. He slowly lowered his hand, his coal black eyes locking on to Naruto. You expect me to believe you are a traveler from the future? That you are Uzumaki Naruto, the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, trapped in a child's body? I don't expect you to believe it easily, Naruto replied, stepping closer, the oversized Akatsuki cloak shifting around his small frame. He didn't project any killing intent. In fact, his chakra was completely open, radiating a warm, melancholic calmness that felt utterly alien to the dark world Itachi inhabited. If I were in your shoes, I'd suspect a trap. A multi-layered genjutsu by an enemy nation, or one of Danzo's twisted root experiments. At the mention of Danzo's name, Itachi's grip on his kunai tightened. His knuckles turned white. You think you know my secrets, Itachi said, his voice dropping to a dangerous, lethal whisper. You read a few names from my mind during the Tsukuyomi backlash and constructed a fantasy to lower my guard. I didn't read your mind, Itachi, Naruto said softly, taking a seat on the damp log across from him. He gestured to the cold ashes of their fire. With a subtle flick of his wrist and a tiny burst of fire-natured chakra, the wood ignited once more, casting a warm, flickering glow over the clearing. I know because I lived it. I know because, in the future, your brother Sasuke told me everything. I know because I fought the man pulling the strings. Itachi slowly stood up, his posture rigid. Prove it. Tell me something only I would know. Not something of Sasuke. Something of me. Naruto looked into the fire, the orange light reflecting in his bright blue eyes. He took a deep breath, preparing to tear open the oldest, deepest wounds of the man standing before him. 3 years ago, Naruto began, his voice steady, carrying the cadence of a seasoned storyteller. The Uchiha clan was planning a coup d'état against Konoha. They were angry, isolated, pushed to the outskirts of the village after the Nine Tails attack because the leadership suspected an Uchiha was behind it. Itachi's eyes narrowed. This was highly classified, but not entirely impossible for a high-level spy to discover. You and your best friend, Shisui Uchiha, tried to stop it, Naruto continued, his tone softening with reverence. Shisui planned to use his Manjikyu Sharingan, the Kodo Amatsukami, on the clan leadership to peacefully end the rebellion. But he was betrayed. Itachi's breath hitched. A microscopic flinch, but Naruto saw it. Danzo Shimura didn't trust Shisui, Naruto said, his voice hardening with residual anger. Danzo believed the only way to protect the village was absolute control. He ambushed Shisui. He stole Shisui's right eye. The kunai in Itachi's hand lowered a fraction of an inch. Poison, bleeding, and knowing Danzo would come for his other eye, Shisui met you at the Nakano River cliffs, Naruto said, looking up to meet Itachi's gaze directly. He entrusted his remaining left eye to you. He told you to protect the village, and the Uchiha name. And then, he stepped backward off the cliff. He drowned himself so his body wouldn't be found, awakening your Manjikyu Sharingan in the process. The forest was dead silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Itachi looked at the blond boy, his face a mask of perfectly sculpted porcelain, but a profound tremor shook his hands. After that, the third Hokage tried to negotiate. Naruto pushed on, relentless in his delivery of the truth. But time ran out. Danzo gave you an ultimatum. Side with the clan and watch them all be annihilated, including your little brother, or slaughter your own family and let Sasuke live. You chose Sasuke. You chose the village. You took the mantle of a traitor, a murderer, and you left your brother with a legacy of hatred, hoping it would make him strong enough to survive. Naruto paused, his eyes tracing the deep stress lines under Itachi's eyes. And now, Naruto finished, his voice dropping to a whisper, you are slowly dying. You have a chakra illness, a sickness in your lungs and pathways that you are hiding from everyone in the Akatsuki. You are keeping yourself alive on sheer willpower and experimental medicines just long enough for Sasuke to become strong enough to kill you, so you can die by an Uchiha's hand and make him a hero. Clatter. The kunai slipped from Itachi's fingers and bounced off the roots of the tree. The prodigy of the leaf, the ruthless Akatsuki missing Nin, the man who had murdered his own parents without shedding a tear, staggered backward. He hit the trunk of the tree and slid down until he was sitting on the damp earth. He buried his face in his hand, his shoulders trembling. He didn't cry. He had forgotten how to cry long ago. But the sheer, overwhelming weight of being seen, of having his agonizing, solitary burden laid bare in the moonlight by a child who looked at him not with hatred, but with profound pity and respect, shattered the walls of his heart. It's true, Itachi whispered into his palm, his voice cracking, sounding so incredibly young. You really are from the future. I am, Naruto said, standing up and walking over to the older boy. He sat down in the dirt next to Itachi, not too close, but close enough to offer a comforting presence. Sasuke. Itachi choked out, looking at Naruto through his fingers. Does he survive? Naruto smiled warmly. Yeah. He survives. It gets really ugly for a while, Itachi. He goes down a dark path. The path of revenge you set him on almost destroys him. He joins Orochimaru. He fights me. He tries to destroy the leaf when he finds out the truth about you. Itachi closed his eyes, a grimace of agony crossing his features. I failed him. No, you didn't, Naruto corrected firmly. You did the only thing you could with the horrible hand you were dealt. And in the end, Sasuke and I figure it out. We stop the war. He grows up. He has a daughter. He becomes the Shadow Hokage, protecting the village from the outside, honoring your true will. Itachi opened his eyes, staring blankly at the wet grass. A daughter. Sasuke becomes a father. A faint, ghostly smile touched his lips, so fragile it looked as if the wind might blow it away. And you became Hokage? Seventh, Naruto grinned, tapping his chest. Died an old man. Warm bed, surrounded by family. But the Sage of Six Paths yanked my soul back, told me the timelines were messing up, and sent me here to fix things before the world breaks again. Itachi's analytical mind, momentarily derailed by emotional shock, began to reassemble itself, snapping back into place with the precision of a master clockmaker. He lowered his hands, his posture straightening, his eyes regaining their sharp, calculating edge. You said Madara Uchiha is coming, Itachi said, the gears turning rapidly. But Madara is dead. He died at the Valley of the End against the first Hokage. That's what history says, Naruto corrected. But he survived. He awakened the Rinnegan. And before he died of old age, he gave those eyes to a young Uzumaki boy in the Rain Village. Nagato. Itachi's eyes widened. Pain. Exactly, Naruto nodded. Pain isn't a god, Itachi. He's Nagato, a grief-stricken man being manipulated. The man who claims to be Madara Uchiha in the Akatsuki right now. The one pulling Pain's strings? That's not Madara. That's Obito Uchiha. Obito? Kakashi's teammate? Itachi processed the information at lightning speed. He was crushed by a boulder. He was saved by the real Madara. Obito is the one who unleashed the 9 tails on the leaf the night I was born. He's the one who helped you massacre the clan. And he's the one planning to gather all 9-tailed beasts to resurrect the 10 tails and cast the infinite Tsukuyomi, a genjutsu that will enslave the entire world in an eternal dream. Itachi fell silent. The pieces of the puzzle, the strange inconsistencies he had noticed within the Akatsuki, suddenly locked together perfectly. The masked man, Tobi, who played the fool but wielded terrifying spatial jutsu. Pain's obsession with the beasts. I joined the Akatsuki to spy on them, Itachi admitted quietly. To ensure they never moved against Konoha. But I was fighting a shadow. I did not know the true depth of the abyss. You couldn't have known, Naruto said. But now we do. And we have an advantage they don't. What is that? They think I'm a feral street rat named Menma, Naruto grinned, a spark of his old, mischievous self shining through. They don't know I have Kurama. They don't know I have 60 years of combat experience. And most importantly, they don't know I have you. Itachi looked at the small, blond boy. Despite the ridiculous, oversized cloak and the youthful face, Itachi could sense the towering, monumental presence of a Kage. This boy had united the world. This boy had saved his brother. For the first time since the night of the massacre, Itachi felt a sensation he had long thought dead. Hope. What is your plan, Hokage-sama? Itachi asked, a hint of genuine respect coloring his tone. Drop the sama, Itachi. I'm Menma right now, remember? Naruto chuckled, though his eyes remained serious. We can't just fight them. Obito is too slippery with his Kemui, and if we kill Pain, we lose the Rinnegan, which we might need to stop Black Zetsu. Black Zetsu? The creepy aloe vera guy, Naruto explained. He's not a manifestation of Madara's will. He's the physical will of Kage Akatsuki, the mother of chakra. He's been manipulating shinobi history for 1,000 years. He is the true enemy. If we step out of line, Zetsu will notice. Naruto stood up, pacing around the fire. So we play the game. We act as the perfect Akatsuki duo. We take their missions. We capture their targets. But secretly, we undermine them. We build a network. When the time comes to capture the Jinchuriki, we fake their deaths and hide them. We break Pain's reliance on Obito. We cure your illness. Itachi blinked. My illness is terminal, Naruto. The damage to my chakra coils can be healed by Tsunade, or by the Rinnegan's Naraka path, Naruto interrupted firmly. I'm not letting you die this time, Itachi. That's an order from your Hokage. Itachi stared at Naruto, then looked down at his own hands. For years he had viewed himself as a dead man walking, a tool meant to be discarded. To be told he had to live, it was a daunting prospect. Very well, Itachi agreed softly. We will form a syndicate in the shadows. But you must understand, Naruto. Zetsu's surveillance is absolute. The Akatsuki's missions are brutal. If we are ordered to slaughter a village to send a message, and we refuse, we will be exposed instantly. I know, Naruto said, his expression darkening. That's where we get creative. I'm an Uzumaki, Itachi. In my time, I became a grandmaster of Fuinjutsu. And you are the greatest genjutsu user alive. Between my seals and your illusions, we can make the world see whatever we want them to see. Itachi's lips twitched upward into a genuine, albeit small, smile. A fox and a crow, deceiving the gods. It seems I finally have a partner I can trust. Believe it, Naruto grinned, holding out his small fist. Itachi looked at the fist, then up at Naruto's eyes. Slowly, the Uchiha raised his hand and bumped his knuckles against the boy's. The secret syndicate was formed. The next morning, the dense humidity of the land of rivers clung to their skin like a wet blanket. They stood on a high ridge overlooking a sprawling fortress nestled in a river valley. The fortress belonged to Lord Gato, not the shipping magnate Naruto had fought in his youth, but a distant cousin who controlled the regional weapon smuggling routes. The objective, Itachi briefed, his voice back to the cold, detached tone of the Akatsuki, is subjugation. This lord has refused to pay the Akatsuki's protection fees for our mercenary work in the region. Leader Sama's orders are to annihilate his private army and break the Lord's spirit, forcing him into a subservient contract. Naruto adjusted the collar of his cloak. He was channeling his chakra into his eyes, extending his sensory net over the valley. I count 60 guards. Mostly rogue samurai, a few low-level missing nin. The Lord is in the central keep. Zetsu is likely watching, Itachi murmured, barely moving his lips. He uses the spores in the vegetation to observe our methods. We must give him a massacre. Right, Naruto nodded. He reached into his oversized pouch and pulled out a stack of blank paper tags and a calligraphy brush infused with chakra-conductive ink. He bit his thumb, smearing a tiny amount of his blood onto the brush to act as a catalyst. With blinding speed, Naruto's hands moved, painting intricate, swirling Uzumaki crests surrounded by complex geometric patterns. What is that? Itachi asked, watching the boy's incredible dexterity. A variation of the stasis seal of the four symbols, Naruto explained quietly. In my time, we use these for medical transport. If placed on the skin, it paralyzes the nervous system and drops the victim's heart rate to 1 beat per minute. To anyone without a Byakugan, they appear clinically dead. Cold skin, no breathing. Itachi's eyes widened slightly in appreciation. Fascinating. But it lacks the visual evidence of a slaughter. Blood. Gore. That's your department, Naruto smirked. Can you cast a valley-wide illusion that affects only Zetsu's sensory spores and any distant onlookers? Itachi closed his eyes. When he opened them, the 3 tomo of his Sharingan spun into the pinwheel of the Manjikyu. I can overlay an area of effect genjutsu. It will not affect the physical environment, but any observer looking at the compound will see severed limbs, arterial spray, and hear the screams. But the timing must be flawless. Follow my lead, Naruto said, slipping the stack of seals into his sleeve. They dropped from the ridge like 2 stones plummeting into a dark pool. The infiltration was a masterclass in shinobi synchronization. Naruto and Itachi didn't need to speak. Decades of combined combat experience allowed them to read each other's micro-movements. They hit the outer wall simultaneously. 2 guards were patrolling the parapet. Before the guards could even draw a breath to shout, Itachi was behind one, a hand clamped over his mouth, pulling him into a chokehold. Naruto materialized in front of the other, his small hand slapping a paper seal directly onto the man's chest armor. The chakra ink flashed blue, crawling off the paper and seeping through the armor into the man's skin like venomous veins. The guard's eyes rolled back, his body going entirely limp. He dropped to the stone floor with a heavy thud, perfectly paralyzed. His breathing stopped. Itachi dropped his unconscious guard, and Naruto applied a second seal. 2 down, Naruto whispered. Let's make some noise. Itachi raised his hands, weaving 3 signs. Genjutsu ephemeral. A subtle distortion rippled through the air over the fortress. To Naruto and Itachi, nothing changed, but to the white, parasitic spores clinging to the underside of the leaves in the surrounding forest, the illusion began. Naruto moved into the courtyard like a tempest. He didn't use flashy jutsu. He used pure, unadulterated speed and taijutsu, slipping through the shadows. A squad of 5 samurai rushed him, their katanas drawn. Naruto ducked beneath a horizontal slash, planted his hands on the ground, and swept the legs of 2 attackers. As they fell, he slapped seals onto their throats. He sprang up, vaulted off the shoulder of the 3rd samurai, and threw 2 kunai with tags attached at the remaining 2. The tags stuck. The ink spread. The men dropped like puppets with their strings cut. But to Zetsu, watching from the trees, the scene was horrific. Through the genjutsu overlay, Zetsu saw the small blonde boy tear through the samurai with vicious winjutsu, severing heads and painting the courtyard walls with crimson blood. He saw the boy's cold, dead eyes as he supposedly butchered the men without a second thought. Itachi moved through the eastern wing, his movements elegant and precise. He didn't even need to touch his enemies. He caught them in minor Sharingan illusions, rendering them unconscious before Naruto followed up, slapping the stasis seals on their foreheads to ensure their vitals dropped to 0. He is fast, Itachi noted internally as he watched Naruto work. His physical strength is limited by his child's body, but his spatial awareness and efficiency are flawless. He wastes 0 movement. Within 20 minutes, the fortress was utterly silent. 60 men lay scattered across the courtyards, hallways, and battlements. In reality, they were merely asleep, their bodies preserved by Uzumaki Fuinjutsu. In the illusion provided by Itachi, the fortress was a charnel house of mutilated corpses. Naruto and Itachi met at the massive wooden doors of the central keep. Setsu is convinced, Itachi whispered, his Sharingan still active. He is recording the aftermath. We proceed to the Lord. Naruto kicked the doors open. Inside, sitting on a lavish, silk-lined throne, was Lord Gato. He was a portly man, dripping in gold jewelry, clutching a heavily modified chakra crossbow. He was trembling violently, staring at the two Akatsuki members. "Stay back!" Gato screamed, aiming the crossbow at Naruto. "I have money! I can pay the bounty! Whatever they are paying you, I will double it!" Naruto walked forward slowly, his expression entirely deadpan. "We aren't here for a bounty. We're here for the Akatsuki's tax." Gato fired. A bolt of pure, compressed lightning chakra shot toward Naruto's chest. Before Naruto could even raise a hand, Itachi was there. The Uchiha didn't dodge. The ribs of a spectral, crimson ribcage flared into existence around him for a fraction of a second. Susanoo. The bolt shattered against the ethereal bone, dispersing into harmless sparks. Gato dropped the crossbow, falling to his knees in sheer terror. "Monsters, you're monsters." Itachi stepped past Naruto, his manjikyu spinning. He grabbed Gato by the collar of his silk robes, lifting the heavy man into the air with terrifying ease. "You will sign over 80% of your smuggling profits to the Dawn," Itachi commanded, his voice echoing in the grand hall. "You will provide us with safe houses in the land of rivers, and you will never, ever refuse a summons again. I promise. Anything. Just don't kill me." Gato sobbed. "Look into my eyes," Itachi whispered. Gato made the mistake of looking. Itachi didn't use the Tsukuyumi. That would draw too much attention. He merely used a standard, deep-rooted hypnotic suggestion. Gato's eyes glazed over as Itachi planted the absolute, terror-driven loyalty to the Akatsuki deep into his subconscious. When Itachi dropped him, the Lord collapsed, twitching, his spirit entirely broken. "Mission accomplished," Naruto said, his voice loud enough to carry, just in case Setsu was listening. "Should I take his head as a trophy, Itachi-senpai?" "No," Itachi replied coldly, playing along perfectly. "A dead man cannot generate revenue. He has learned his lesson. His army is eradicated. He will serve." They turned and walked out of the keep. As they passed through the courtyard of corpses, Naruto discreetly wove a single-hand sign. The stasis seals on the men would hold for exactly 24 hours. Long enough for the Akatsuki to leave the region and for Zetsu to move on. When the men woke up, they would find themselves perfectly healthy, albeit deeply confused, with their lord raving about his absolute devotion to the red clouds. As they leaped over the fortress walls and vanished into the treeline, they left behind a legend of a massacre that had never actually happened. Miles away, in a subterranean cavern lit only by the glowing roots of the divine tree, a swirling vortex of space distorted the air. Obito Uchiha stepped out of the Kamui dimension, his orange, swirled mask hiding his scarred features. He wore the black robes of his Madara persona. The ground bubbled, and black and white Setsu emerged from the rock. "Report," Obito commanded, his voice deep and authoritative. "The subjugation in the land of rivers was a complete success," white Setsu chimed cheerfully. "They wiped out the entire garrison. It was a total bloodbath." "The boy." "Menma," black Setsu hissed, his yellow eyes narrowing. "He is highly competent. His speed is exceptional for a child. He utilizes an aggressive, lethal combat style. He butchered dozens of men without a hint of hesitation or remorse." Obito crossed his arms, his single visible Sharingan glowing in the dim light. "So, Payne's assessment was correct. The boy is a natural-born killer." "Oh, absolutely." White Setsu laughed. "He and Itachi make a terrifying team. The crow and the little wolf. They didn't even speak to each other. Just slice, chop, boom." "I remain cautious," Black Setsu added. "He is an anomaly. But, as long as he serves the Eye of the Moon plan, he is a useful pawn. He shows no loyalty to the hidden villages." He is a true child of the Akatsuki. Obito turned away, looking up at the massive husk of the ghetto statue suspended in the darkness above them. Keep an eye on him, Zetsu, Obito ordered. If he continues to prove himself, we will accelerate the plan. Itachi's health is failing. The boy might just be the perfect replacement when the Uchiha finally drops dead. Obito chuckled darkly, a sound that echoed through the empty cavern. Welcome to the true world, Menma. Let us see how much pain you can inflict. The air in the subterranean meeting chamber of the Akatsuki's secondary hideout, a hollowed-out cavern deep within the mountains of the land of Earth, smelled of sulfur and ancient dust. Unlike the astral projections they usually employed, today's gathering was physical. The early stages of the Jinchuriki capture plan were being finalized, requiring the exchange of physical scrolls, encrypted bounties, and territorial maps. The flickering torchlight cast long, monstrous shadows across the walls, mirroring the collection of S-rank criminals assembled around the central stone table. Naruto stood slightly behind Itachi's right shoulder, a silent, diminutive shadow draped in a cloak far too large for him. His face was half buried in the high crimson collar, his eyes cast downward, playing the part of the obedient, feral apprentice. Internally, however, the seventh Hokage was hard at work. Naruto's breathing was perfectly measured, slow, and rhythmic. With every inhalation, he wasn't just drawing in oxygen. He was pulling in minuscule threads of natural energy from the cavern around him. He didn't dare draw enough to manifest the toad-like pigmentation around his eyes. That would instantly expose him as a sage. But he drew just enough to expand his sensory perception beyond the physical realm. To the naked eye, the cavern held 8 people. To Naruto's sage-enhanced senses, the room was a blinding web of chakra signatures, each one a different color and texture. Itachi's chakra felt like a calm, freezing lake, though Naruto could sense the dark, sickly taint of his illness spreading through his chest. Kisame's was a raging, bottomless ocean. Kakuzu's felt like thick, coagulated mud, stitched together by violently vibrating threads. But it was the signatures lurking in the periphery that commanded Naruto's true attention. Beneath the stone floor, weaving through the bedrock like microscopic parasites, were thousands of white, thread-like roots. They pulsed with a strange, ancient vitality. Zetsu. The spy network was vast, extending miles outward, capturing every vibration, every heartbeat, every whispered word in the vicinity. And then, there was him, sitting casually on a stalagmite near the back of the cavern, legs swinging playfully, was the man who had ruined Naruto's life before it had even truly begun. He wore a dark cloak, though not the official Akatsuki uniform, and his face was hidden behind a swirling orange mask with a single eye-hole. Obito Uchiha. Keep your heart rate steady, Kit, Kurama's voice rumbled in the cavern of Naruto's mind, a heavy paw of caution pressing down on the boy's boiling emotions. Your chakra is spiking. It tastes like killing intent. If you lash out now, Itachi will not be able to save you. I know, Kurama, Naruto replied internally, forcing his fists to unclench beneath the folds of his cloak. But looking at him, knowing what he did to my mom, to my dad, knowing what he's going to do to the world, it takes everything I have not to rip his head off right now. Patience is the weapon of the survivor, the fox advised wisely. Watch him. Learn his game. He is playing the fool to gauge your true nature. As if on cue, the masked man leaped down from the stalagmite with an exaggerated, cartoonish bounce. He landed perfectly in front of Naruto, bending at the waist so his mask was inches from the 12-year-old's face. Hello there! The masked man chirped, his voice a high-pitched, grating whine that sounded utterly ridiculous. You must be the new kid. Zetsu told me all about you. Menma, right? Oh wow, you are so tiny! Do you even know how to hold a kunai? Or do you just bite people's ankles? Naruto stared into the single eye hole. Behind the dark abyss of the mask, he knew exactly what was looking back at him. A Manjikyu Sharingan. Cold, calculating, and merciless. Obito was using the Tobi persona, a supposed goofy subordinate of Zetsu, allowed to hang around the edges of the organization as a reserve member. Back off, Naruto growled, injecting the perfect amount of preteen edge and street rat hostility into his voice. He swatted Tobi's hand away. I'm not a pet. Ouch. So aggressive. Tobi wailed, clutching his hand and dancing backward on his heels. Senpai, did you see that? The little puppy has teeth. I bet he's super scary when he's angry. Rawr, Deidara, standing across the table, scoffed loudly. Shut up, Toby-un. You're giving me a headache. And don't tease the brat. I heard he and Itachi painted Lord Gato's courtyard with the blood of 60 men. Kid might just slice your annoying tongue out. Eek. So violent. Toby hid behind Zetsu's dual-toned form. Protect me, Zetsu-san. You are embarrassing us, Black Zetsu hissed, though White Zetsu merely chuckled. Naruto kept his face utterly impassive, but his mind was racing. Toby's physical comedy was flawless, but through his minimal sage sensing, Naruto could feel the truth. Toby's chakra was completely still. While his body flailed and his voice pitched wildly, his internal energy was locked down, a coiled viper ready to strike. He was watching Naruto's micro-expressions, looking for a slip-up, looking for a reason to deem Menma a threat. Enough, Pain's voice echoed through the cavern, dropping the temperature by several degrees. The holographic projection of the Akatsuki leader flickered at the head of the table. Even absent in physical form, Nagato's presence commanded absolute silence. Toby immediately stopped his antics, standing rigidly at attention, though he subtly shifted his weight to ensure he had a perfect view of both Itachi and Naruto. The time for preparation is nearing its end, Pain announced, his Rinnegan glowing ominously through the projection. We have secured the necessary funds. We have established the required footholds. The time has come to begin gathering intelligence on our primary targets. The nine-tailed beasts. A ripple of dangerous excitement passed through the room. Haiden grinned, running a thumb over the edge of his scythe. Kakuzu mentally calculated the bounties of the Jinchuriki. We will strike in order, from the one tail to the 9 tails, to ensure the ghetto statue's chakra balance remains stable, Pain continued. However, intelligence gathering must begin immediately for all of them. These are not ordinary targets. They are walking weapons of mass destruction, fiercely guarded by their respective hidden villages. We'll need to locate the wanderers first, Sasori's muffled voice came from his puppet armor. The 4 tails and 6 tails are missing Nin. They will be harder to track than those kept behind village walls. Exactly, Pain nodded. Itachi. Menma. Itachi stepped forward, his expression blank. Leader, your performance in the Land of Rivers was satisfactory, Pain stated, his eyes flicking briefly to Naruto. Your next assignment will test your tracking capabilities. You are to move toward the borders of the Land of Earth and the Land of Water. Gather intel on Rashi of the 4 tails, and Utakata of the 6 tails. Do not engage. Merely locate and report. Understood, Itachi replied smoothly. Dismissed, Pain ordered. The holograms of Pain and Konan vanished. The physical members began to disperse, melting into the shadows or walking toward the tunnel exits. As Naruto turned to follow Itachi, he felt a sudden, bizarre shift in the air pressure behind him. It was incredibly subtle, like the pop of an ear on a high mountain. Naruto didn't turn around, but his sage sensing painted a vivid picture. Toby had just utilized Kamui. A localized distortion of space-time had flared around the masked man for a fraction of a second, just long enough for him to slip a tiny, chakra-infused tracking spore onto the hem of Naruto's oversized cloak. He's tracking me, Naruto realized, his blood running cold. He doesn't trust me at all. If I had reacted to that spatial distortion, he would have known I was a sensor type, and my cover would be blown. Good restraint, Kurama praised gruffly. Let him have his tracker. It only solidifies your alibi if he sees you acting perfectly normal. Naruto followed Itachi out into the blinding sunlight of the mountains, the oppressive weight of the Akatsuki's gaze heavy on his small shoulders. He had survived the first test, but the true manipulation was just beginning. A week later, the eternal rain of Amigekyo welcomed them back like a cold, wet embrace. The intelligence-gathering mission had been long, arduous, and entirely fabricated. Itachi and Naruto had spent days tracking false leads, ensuring they moved exactly as a master and apprentice duo should, fully aware that Obito's spore and Zetsu's roots were monitoring their every move. They had provided the Akatsuki with slightly outdated, publicly available information on the Jinchuriki, just enough to look competent without actually endangering the targets. But the physical toll on Itachi was worsening. The moment they reached their designated quarters within the towering, rusted skyscrapers of the Rain Village, Itachi collapsed against the wall. A violent, racking cough tore through his chest. He pressed a blood-stained handkerchief to his mouth, his breathing ragged. Itachi! Naruto was at his side instantly, dropping his cloak. His hands glowed with the soft, green light of mystical palm jutsu, a rudimentary medical ninjutsu Sakura had forced him to learn during the peace era. He pressed his glowing hands against Itachi's back, pushing soothing chakra into the Uchiha's inflamed lungs. Do not waste your chakra, Itachi rasped, waving him off weakly, though he didn't pull away from the healing touch. It is a temporary fix. The damage is necrotic. It's enough to keep you breathing until I can figure out how to get Tsunade here, or get Nagato to use the Naraka path on you, Naruto muttered stubbornly, maintaining the flow of green chakra. You must be careful, Naruto, Itachi whispered, leaning his head back against the cold steel wall. If Obito or Zetsu discover you possess medical ninjutsu, they will question your origins. Feral children do not learn advanced chakra control and healing. I know. That's why I'm only doing it here, where I've layered the room with 3 different sensory blocking seals, Naruto replied, gesturing to the invisible Fuinjutsu tags he had painted on the baseboards the moment they arrived. Zetsu is deaf and blind in this room. But you need to rest. Ryo rest. Sleep for a day. Itachi looked at the 12-year-old boy, a mixture of profound exhaustion and quiet gratitude in his eyes. He nodded slowly, allowing Naruto to help him to the sparse cot in the corner of the room. Within minutes, the Uchiha prodigy was asleep, his features softening, looking more like the older brother he was meant to be rather than the international terrorist he pretended to be. Naruto stood over him for a moment, his jaw set in a hard line. He pulled his oversized cloak back on, adjusting the collar. Rest, Itachi, Naruto thought. I've got the next phase handled. Naruto slipped out of the room, locking the heavy metal door behind him. He navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the central tower, his footsteps echoing in the damp silence. He wasn't going to rest. He had a target of his own. The 7th Hokage knew that fighting the Akatsuki physically was a fool's errand. They were too strong, too organized, and too deeply entrenched in their ideology. To dismantle them, he had to attack the foundation of that ideology. He had to strike at the heart. And the heart of the Akatsuki wasn't pain. It was Konan. Naruto found her in the uppermost observatory of the tower, a massive, circular room with floor-to-ceiling glass windows that looked out over the weeping, industrialized cityscape of Amigakure. She sat alone at a metal table, a stack of pristine white paper before her. Her delicate fingers moved with hypnotic grace, folding, creasing, and shaping the paper into intricate origami flowers. She was not wearing her Akatsuki cloak. Instead, she wore her simple, dark purple robes, a single blue paper flower resting in her hair. Naruto stood in the doorway, watching her. In his timeline, Konan had died a tragic, brutal death at the hands of Obito, fighting desperately to protect Nagato's Rinnegan and Naruto's dream of peace. She had believed in him. Now, he had to make her believe in herself again. He didn't mask his approach. He scuffed his sandal against the metal floor, announcing his presence. Konan's amber eyes flicked up, locking onto the small blonde boy. Her expression was unreadable, a perfect mask of ethereal indifference. Menma, she said softly, her voice barely carrying over the sound of the rain lashing against the glass. You have returned from your mission with Itachi. I was told it was successful. It was, Naruto replied, walking slowly into the room. He didn't approach the table directly, instead walking toward the massive window, looking out over the gray, smog-choked village. Lots of walking, lots of sitting in the mud. Not exactly the godly work Pain-sama promised. Konan's hands paused in their folding. She studied the back of the boy's head. He was insolent, rough around the edges, but there was a strange, undeniable gravity to him. The work of a god is not always glorious, Konan answered, resuming her folding. It is the slow, agonizing process of paving a road through the darkness so that others may walk in the light. Amigakure is safe because of our work. Naruto snorted, a harsh, cynical sound. He leaned his forehead against the cold glass. Safe? I grew up down there, lady. You call that safe? People are starving. Kids are slitting each other's throats for a moldy piece of bread. The rain never stops, and the blood never washes away. If this is Paine's idea of salvation, he's got a twisted sense of humor. It was a bold, borderline suicidal thing to say to the angel of the rain. But Naruto knew Konan. He knew that beneath her icy exterior, she possessed a deeply empathetic heart. She didn't want blind obedience. She wanted a reason to believe. You speak with a lot of anger for a boy who owes us his life. Konan's voice cooled, a hint of a threat edging into her tone. The paper flower in her hand seemed to sharpen, the edges becoming razor-like. I speak the truth, Naruto countered, turning around to face her, leaning back against the glass. He crossed his small arms, looking at her with piercing blue eyes. I'm grateful you took me in. I'm grateful for the food and the cloak. But don't expect me to drink the Kool-Aid. I've seen how the world works. The strong eat the weak. He pointed a small finger at the origami flowers on the table. Like those. They're beautiful. But if I take one and hold it out in the rain, it turns to mush. It falls apart. Just like this village. Just like your dawn. Konan stared at him, genuinely taken aback by the sheer cynicism of a 12-year-old. You know nothing of our origins, Menma. You know nothing of what we sacrificed to build this. Then tell me, Naruto challenged, walking toward the table and pulling up a chair across from her. He sat down, propping his chin on his hands, shedding the hostility and replacing it with an intense, probing curiosity. If I'm going to risk my life for the Akatsuki, I want to know who I'm actually fighting for. Because from where I'm sitting, it doesn't look like we're fighting for peace. Konan hesitated. She was a deeply private woman. She shared her heart only with Nagato, and previously, with Yahiko. But looking into Menma's bright, defiant blue eyes, she felt an inexplicable, ghost-like tug in her chest. He has Yahiko's fire, she thought, a pang of ancient grief piercing her heart. The same refusal to bow to the world's cruelty. We did not start as we are now, Konan began, her voice dropping to a wistful whisper. Her fingers grazed the petals of a paper lily. Long ago, during the Third Great Shinobi War, the Akatsuki was a beacon of hope. We did not use terror. We did not seek weapons of mass destruction. We were mercenaries of peace. We stood between the great nations and the innocent people of the rain. We fought so that children like you would not have to. What changed? Naruto asked softly, his talk no jutsu fully engaging, not with loud declarations of friendship, but with surgical, empathetic precision. The world changed us, Konan said, her eyes darkening. The great nations saw our peace as a threat. The leader of the Leaf Sambu, Danzo, conspired with the former tyrant of this village, Hanzo of the Salamander. They ambushed us. They forced our leader, my dearest friend, to sacrifice himself to save us. Yahiko, Naruto said quietly. Konan's breath hitched. Her amber eyes snapped up, wide with shock. How do you know that name? No one speaks that name anymore. I hear things in the alleys, Naruto lied smoothly, his face a mask of solemn understanding. Older folks talk about a man with orange hair who smiled a lot. A guy who genuinely wanted to save them without breaking them first. They say Pain wears his face. Konan looked away, a profound sadness washing over her. Yes. Nagato uses his body as the Deva path. To keep Yahiko's dream alive. But is it his dream? Naruto pushed, stepping dangerously close to the edge. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. From what I hear, Yahiko wanted people to understand each other. To talk, to find common ground. What we're doing now, hunting Jinchuriki, planning to hold the world hostage with a giant monster, that doesn't sound like understanding. That sounds like tyranny. It is the only way. Konan snapped, her voice cracking with sudden emotion, defensive and sharp. A flurry of paper rose from the floor, swirling around her like a localized storm. The world does not understand words, Menna. It only understands pain. Nagato must bear the burden of a god to force them into submission. Once they know true terror, they will stop fighting. Naruto didn't flinch at the paper storm. He just looked at her, his blue eyes filled with a terrifying, ancient sadness. And what happens to the god when the job is done? Naruto asked quietly. The paper stopped swirling. It hovered in the air, trembling. I see him, Conan, Naruto pressed on, his voice gentle but unrelenting. When he holographically projects, his chakra feels immense. But it also feels like a dying star. Those eyes, the Rinnegan, they aren't his, are they? They're eating him alive. He's draining his own life force to power a dream that isn't even his. Conan's hands flew to her mouth. She stared at the boy as if he were a demon who had just peered directly into her soul. How could this street child see what no one else in the Akatsuki saw? How could he know the physical toll the outer path was taking on Nagato's emaciated body? Who told you this? Conan whispered, terrified. Nobody had to, Naruto said, leaning back in his chair. I have a knack for reading people. I survived because I know who's really in charge in an alleyway. He paused, letting the silence stretch, before dropping the ultimate bomb. If pain is a god, Naruto said slowly, enunciating every word, why does he take orders from a man who hides behind a mask? The air in the room shattered. Conan stood up so fast her chair tipped backward, crashing to the metal floor. Silence! Conan hissed, looking wildly toward the door, her heart hammering in her chest. You do not know what you are talking about. Madara is our benefactor. He provided the framework for the Eye of the Moon plan. He shares our goal of peace. Madara Uchiha is a ghost, Naruto retorted, his voice rising, shedding the cynical kid act and letting a fraction of the Hokage's authority bleed through. He's a shadow who plays the fool as Toby to spy on you, while whispering in Nagato's ear from the dark. Ask yourself, Conan. Why does a legend like Madara hide? Why does he let Nagato do all the heavy lifting, take all the physical damage, and bear all the hatred of the world? Conan stared at him, speechless. The questions he was asking were the exact same questions she had buried deep within her own heart for years. Questions she had been too afraid to voice, out of fear of breaking Nagato's fragile resolve. He's using you, Naruto stated, his voice a hammer striking a glass pane. He's using Yahiko's face, and he's using Nagato's life force. When the Ten-Tails is revived, do you really think Madara is going to let Nagato control it? Nagato is just a battery to him. A sacrificial pawn. Conan closed her eyes, trembling. The defensive walls she had built around her heart were crumbling under the weight of a 12-year-old boy's brutal logic. I don't know who you really are, Menma, Conan whispered, her voice fractured. But your words are treason. If you speak them again, I will have to kill you. You can try, Naruto said softly, standing up. He reached out and gently picked up the blue paper flower she had been folding. He placed it carefully on the table. But killing me won't change the truth. You know I'm right, Conan. You are the angel. Your job is to protect the god. So, who is protecting Nagato from the man in the mask? Naruto didn't wait for an answer. He turned and walked out of the room, his oversized cloak trailing behind him, leaving Conan alone in the cold, echoing observatory. That was ruthless, Naruto, Kurama noted, his massive voice echoing in the mindscape. There was a profound sense of respect in the fox's tone. You ripped her emotional bandages off without any anesthesia. You manipulated her trauma perfectly. I feel like garbage, Naruto replied internally as he walked back toward his quarters, his chest tight with guilt. I just used Yahiko's memory as a weapon against her. The old me would never have done that. I would have just yelled about friendship and never giving up. The old you was fighting enemies he could punch, Kurama countered. You are fighting an ideology now. You are playing chess against masters of deception. If you do not strike at their hearts, you will lose. You planted the seed of doubt. Now we wait for it to sprout. Deep in the subterranean bowels of Amigakure, far beneath the rusted towers, lay a chamber devoid of natural light. Here, suspended in a massive, biomechanical walker, was the true body of pain. Nagato Uzumaki. He was a tragic, horrifying sight. His crimson Uzumaki hair had long since faded to a sickly, pale white. His body was emaciated, little more than a skeleton wrapped in pale skin. Dozens of black chakra receivers pierced his back, connecting him directly to the ghetto machine that allowed him to transmit his chakra to the 6 paths of pain above. He was breathing heavily, his chest rising and falling with agonizing slowness. The sheer toll of projecting his power across the country was slowly killing him. The heavy iron door to the chamber groaned open. Nagato did not open his eyes, but he recognized the soft, rhythmic sound of paper brushing against metal. Conan, Nagato's true voice rasped, weak and frail, utterly devoid of the godlike resonance of the Deva path. Is something wrong? The rain feels different today. Conan stepped into the dim light. She carried a tray with a bowl of nutrient broth, but her hands were trembling so badly the liquid threatened to spill. She set the tray down on a sterile metal cart and walked up to the walker, placing a gentle, cool hand on Nagato's feverish cheek. You are pushing yourself too hard, Nagato, Conan whispered, her amber eyes swimming with unshed tears. The intelligence gathering, the maintenance of the village, it is draining you. It is necessary, Nagato murmured, leaning slightly into her touch. The eye of the moon, true peace, it requires sacrifice. Yahiko's dream must be realized. Conan closed her eyes. The boy's words echoed in her mind, a relentless, deafening drumbeat. If pain is a god, why does he take orders from a man who hides behind a mask? Nagato, Conan said, her voice trembling. It was the first time in over a decade that she had hesitated to follow him blindly. Are you certain this is Yahiko's dream? Nagato's Rinnegan eyes snapped open, glowing brightly in the dark room. He looked at his oldest, dearest friend in confusion. What do you mean, Conan? Madara showed us the path. The infinite Tsukuyami is the only way to eradicate pain. It is the evolution of our original goal. But is it? Conan pushed, stepping back, wrapping her arms around herself. To trap the world in a genjutsu. To strip away free will entirely. Yahiko wanted people to choose to understand one another. He wanted to bridge the gap between hearts. What Madara proposes, it is not a bridge. It is a cage. Nagato's brow furrowed. A sharp pain shot through his temple. Madara's methods are extreme, but the reality of the shinobi world demands it. Why are you questioning this now? We are too far along to turn back. I question it because I am watching you die, Nagato. Conan finally cried out, tears spilling over her eyelashes. I am watching this godhood consume you. Madara hides in the shadows, playing his games, moving us like pieces on a board, while you bleed for a plan that he designed. The chamber fell deathly silent. The only sound was the mechanical hum of the life support machine and Nagato's ragged breathing. Nagato stared at the ceiling, his Rinnegan swirling. For years, he had operated with absolute, terrifying certainty. His grief had forged an ironclad conviction. But Conan was his anchor. If Conan was doubting, Nagato is just a battery to him. A sacrificial pawn. The words weren't menace. Nagato hadn't heard the boy speak them, but they were the logical, unspoken conclusion to Conan's plea. Madara is necessary, Nagato said, though for the very first time, his voice lacked its absolute conviction. It sounded hollow. Uncertain. He possesses the knowledge of the Uchiha tablet. He controls the Nine Tails. He controls us, Conan whispered fiercely. Please, Nagato. I lost Yahiko. I will not lose you to a masked phantom's ambitions. We must be cautious. We must re-evaluate his true intentions. Nagato looked at her, seeing the sheer terror in her eyes. It wasn't terror of their enemies. It was terror of their supposed ally. Slowly, agonizingly, Nagato nodded his head. Very well, the god of the rain whispered. We will watch him. We will prepare contingencies. If Madara attempts to betray us, we will strike first. High above, in a small, sealed room in the tower, Naruto sat cross-legged on the floor, perfectly still. A small, sad smile touched his lips. The manipulators had been manipulated. The unbreakable alliance of the Akatsuki had just sustained its first, terminal fracture.